Welcome once again to Lehto's Law. Here's Steve Lehto.
Back in the day, there was a TV show called L.A. Law, and I've got a license plate on the set as an homage to that TV show. Well, one of the things about that show that was horribly unrealistic was the length of time in which they could resolve cases, meaning that the episode would start, they'd introduce you to a bunch of clients of the firm, and then they'd follow those cases through to the resolution at the 55-minute mark of the show. And I understand time compression in stories and movies and so on, but it does fly in the face of what actually happens. So I've got a story here about something that happened back preceding 2016 that's just now getting wrapped up in court. But there is a very interesting twist as to what happened at the end of this story. Kevin sent it to me from BusinessInsider.com. Catherine Tangalakis-Lippert wrote it. A federal judge accused Facebook of gaslighting users impacted by the data breaches and fined the site and its lawyers nearly $1 million. So if you go into court representing somebody and later on it turns out that your client did something wrong that caused you to do something bad in representation, sometimes your client can get hit with costs or fines. But when you go into court as an attorney representing somebody and they get hit and you get hit with fines, that's a different story altogether. And that's an ugly way to have this case shake out. But Facebook's parent company, Meta, agreed in December to pay $725 million to settle the Cambridge Analytica privacy lawsuit. But a judge on Thursday decided that wasn't quite enough to ensure the social media giant had learned its lesson for sharing user data without permission. U.S. District Court Judge Vince Chabria ordered Facebook and its lawyers from the high-profile firm of Gibson Dunn to pay an additional $925,000. It's actually $925,078.51 to the class action plaintiffs for trying to gaslight their users and the court about its conduct. So it's one thing if you're litigating with somebody and you're making it difficult for the other side. Sometimes people take that too far, and the judge says that the other side was gaslighting the plaintiff's attorneys. But when you look like you're doing something to mess with the court and the court catches you, it's not good. It's not good. Now, you might say, Steve, I'm always curious about those big numbers, and I do get asked this question a lot. Why $925,078.51? Why? Where does the 51 cents come from? Well, if you calculate costs to penalize somebody and you ask the other side, what are your costs? They would itemize what their costs are, and that could include, for instance, copying costs or postage costs. So it might be that if you added up all the postage and all the copying and all the other stuff that went into this file and added it all up, you could come up with a weird number that hangs the 51 cents off the back end like that. So Facebook and its lawyers, according to the judge, conducted a sustained, concerted, bad faith effort to throw an obstacle after obstacle in front of the plaintiffs, all in an attempt to push the plaintiffs into settling the case for less than they would have gotten otherwise. That's a quote. Another quote. Unfortunately, this sort of conduct is not uncommon in our court system, but it was unusually egregious and persistent here. So I've seen attorneys go into court before, in front of the judge, say, Your Honor, just to let you know, the other side is doing X, Y, and Z, and it's a violation of the rules or not following a court order, violating ethics, whatever it might be. And I've seen a judge actually have a hearing on this and come to the conclusion that, yes, somebody's doing something wrong here. But I've never seen them hit with $925,000 in costs and fines. So the social media giant and its lawyers, again, this is according to the judge, delayed proceedings and withheld evidence during depositions, refusing to disclose what user data had been collected from individual claimants, despite sharing that data with third-party businesses without their consent. So the judge is saying, if you're telling the other side, we don't know what data got shared, but they actually had shared this data, how hard is it to go, oh, that data? Sure, over here. Class action lawsuit was originally filed in 2018 after it was revealed that Facebook had exposed the data of 87 million users to third-party businesses, including a political consulting firm. Now, an employee of that firm leaked details to the press about how the firm harvested the data of millions of Facebook users without their consent, using their details to target political advertising in hopes of swaying the outcome of the 2016 election. And a couple very, very high-profile politicians were apparently privy to much of that information that was gained by Cambridge Analytica. CEO Mark Zuckerberg was eventually deposed about his knowledge, and he testified before a joint hearing of the Senate's Commerce and Judiciary Committees regarding whether Facebook could have done something to stop the issue before it was too late. The court's nearly $1 million sanction for poor conduct during the lawsuit proceedings is loose change for a company like Facebook, and even for a law firm like Gibson Dunn, the judge's ruling acknowledged. In 2022, the revenue generated by Meta amounted to roughly $116 billion US dollars, according to data by Statista. Some of these names that people make up, I understand what they're getting at there, but Statista. But it's important for courts to help protect litigants from suffering financial harm as a result of their opponent litigation misconduct, the ruling continued, and hopefully this ruling will create some incentive for Facebook and the law firm, and perhaps even others, to behave more honorably moving forward. The attorneys listed in the suit, as well as representatives for Facebook, did not immediately respond to insiders' requests for comment. And I know some people are going to say, Steve, if you really want to stop behavior of a company that makes $116 billion, $1 million fine ain't going to do it. Well, you have to remember that the judge has got to follow the law and the court rules. And the court rules will say, for instance, that if somebody behaves in a bad way, here's what you can do about it. One of them is to force them to pay the costs and attorney fees of the other side. So the costs and the attorney fees of the other side are $925,078.51. If that's the number, that's the number. Now, I believe that there could be other sections of rules and laws that say that they can do things of a punitive nature if they can. But the real gist of this is there's an underlying class action lawsuit over the release of all that data that was then sold to third parties and used and so on. And so while they're doing that, it comes to light, and the plaintiff's attorneys argue to the court that the defendants and or their attorneys are playing games with discovery. And so, and by the way, for those who don't know, discovery is the process during litigation of a lawsuit where you're allowed to ask the other side to show you their evidence and vice versa. It goes both ways. And so, for instance, if somebody's going to testify about something, you can make them come in and sit for a deposition where they testify under oath, and you get to cross-examine them and ask them everything that they might know. And so both sides do that, and it streamlines the trial process. There's a lot less fishing going on in the courtroom during an actual trial where somebody's done the discovery properly. And I have known people who actually have sat through a trial on a jury and later on asked me or asked somebody else and said, how did they know all that stuff about that guy? How'd they know that? How'd they know that? And it's like, oh, well, they took his deposition a year ago and they asked him all those questions and got all those answers. But in court, they can skip over all the extraneous stuff. So when somebody puts their star witness on the stand and goes through their direct examination, they say, okay, no further questions. Counselor, cross-examination, the judge asks. Yes, you stand up and you ask them the first question, and it can be big old verbal punch right between the eyes because you know something about them. You've been sitting on the entire time. And by the way, the other side knows you know it too because they were probably at the deposition, or at least somebody from the firm was. So those kinds of discovery abuses, though, where you don't give the information that you do have, or you drag your feet on it, or you've got witnesses who become evasive and don't remember stuff when you're asking the questions, but they remember it crystal clear when their attorney's asking it, well, that kind of stuff can come back to haunt you. And here it's haunting them to the tune of $925,078.51. Could the judge have rounded it up to $925,079? No, like I said, it's probably actual costs and attorney fees. So there you go. It's an interesting story, but again, this dates back to a lawsuit filed in 2018 over things that preceded the 2016 election. And here we are, I believe it's about 2023 or so, give or take. Federal judge accused Facebook of gaslighting users impacted by the data breaches and find the site and its lawyers. Nearly $1 million. BusinessInsider.com wrote it. Kevin sends it to me, and Catherine Tangalikis or Lippert wrote it. Questions or comments, put them below. Those. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.
Thank you for watching Lehto's Law. Care about what other people think, and you will always be their prisoner.